Susan, would you like to try and report on today's proceedings, which have been huge?
So I've done this like mud map here. Thank you for the post-it notes, because I would not have been able to put this together. This has been an amazing range of speakers we've had, and with such powerful messages that I know I won't do it justice, so I'll just start off saying that. But I'll do my best, and I'll pick up some of the things that at least struck me and hopefully cover up the range of things talked about. We've actually heard from those people who, you know, as it were, at the front line of climate change and the impacts of climate change in our region. And I think that is what makes the talks we've had so powerful. We've noted that the impacts of climate change can be sudden on cultural heritage, can be sudden and catastrophic, or sometimes they can be much slower and occur relatively slowly, or it be cause secondary impacts that potentially will catch us unaware in the culture and heritage that we might lose. But whatever the impact, the message is simple, and it's remained unwavering. Unless we drastically cut our emissions, the loss and destruction of tangible or intangible heritage is inevitable. Now I'll go to another post-it note now. So from the very start, in the Welcome to Country delivered by Michael West, the connection of people, their spirit, and the connection to land has been emphasised. And this message carried through, I think, all of the papers. Maynard Talia's presentation poignantly brought this to the focus when he pointed out that for the people of Tuvalu, no matter where they live and no matter where they die, their final wish is to be buried back home with their ancestors. The connection of the individual spirit to a tangible place, I think, was illustrated by his personal story when he explained that when his children were born, their placenta was buried in the land where they were born, with a coconut tree placed on top, consistent with traditional practice. And their umbilical cord was buried back home in his family's traditional lands, which formed the indelible connection to their homeland for those people that would last throughout their life. So I think, for me, that was a very powerful message. Jason and Karen reminded us that climate change impacts are not just confined to coastal areas where a lot of the focus and attention is. It's not just about the impact of rising sea levels. Their case study at Narran Lakes noted how changing climatic conditions have gradually but inexorably impacted the biodiversity, and how the loss of just one species can in fact have this flow-on effect, a domino effect if you like, impacting totemic bird species and cultural practices. Elizabeth emphasised the need to pay close attention to nature and the messages that it sends us, the importance of traditional ecological knowledge and the role it can play in both providing early warnings to us, but also in how it might help to build resilience and assist in post-disaster recovery. She spoke through her questions and about several times about the need to support the transgenerational transmission of this knowledge. Sarah, who we heard in the panel, also recounted many traditional stories that held a huge amount of information. And Mayna reminded us that in a changing climate, this will also have an impact on the reliability of these traditional indicators, and that this calls for an adjustment and flexibility on the part of traditional owners themselves and Indigenous people. Chrissy expanded on this with examples of changes which have been documented in her country regarding the seasonality of some indicator species, such as the example she gave of the flowering of certain trees, sorry, forgot the species, that indicate the time when the mullet will be fat and they're ready to harvest. She noted that already changes in this seasonality has been documented, indicating the need for a constant adaptation and constant sort of flexibility. She spoke of the need for Indigenous people to be willing to observe and learn and adapt traditional practices to address these changes to the environment. This was supported by observations from Sarah again, and both Sarah and Mayna emphasised the need for a marriage between traditional ecological knowledge and scientific data to achieve the best outcomes. It seems the willingness to adapt in the video of Narran Lakes, one of the TOs also posed the question, do we leave our culture in the past, or do we pick up our culture and continue it through continue it through practice. I think that, in fact, indicates the willingness that people have, their understanding that, in fact, they do have to be adaptive and they're prepared to do it. So now I've got to go to another spot, sorry, about this. And so, all right, and let's not forget that, as Maina pointed out, climate change action has a moral aspect. It's unjust. He used the words, if not evil, to be spending billions of dollars on a nuclear submarine, that's an allusion to Australia, by the way, while an entire country drowns. It has a political aspect. What happens to the rights of a sovereign people when they lose their land? And how are the sea rights and rights to resources protected? I think we need to keep that in our mind, that it's not just about the loss of things, it's about a loss of a whole range of rights surrounding those things. There were many action statements I noticed, and I sort of just highlighted a few as I went through. Some of them, for instance, I think Michael West said, a little less conversation and a little more conservation action. Let's grab your coats and start walking together. Heather Harris from the Australian Museum also noted that climate change is the most significant threat to peoples and culture in the world, but especially to Pacific people, and requires urgent action. Australia and New Zealand must not stay silent. They must support Indigenous people of Tuvalu, another action statement. And there was also an action statement about people and government need to stop talking and cut emissions. I think there were also a number of sort of culture, nature and science, traditional ecological knowledge, partnership type statements that were made today, which are important. One, that cultural practices and traditional knowledge needs to be regarded as valid, equally valid, as scientific knowledge. And it's not that one is better than the other, it's rather that they can work effectively together. I think that was an extremely important point. And the other one, where are we? A good leader, it's not good leadership to ignore facts and science, which I think we all agree with. And the third one has disappeared. Oh, there it is. Oh yeah, again, there was just noting at Narran Lakes that the biodiversity loss is an indicator, a link between that culture and nature at Narran Lakes. So in terms of, all right, sorry, I've got to find my ending, which is mixed in. The yellow and the green look very similar. This is the problem. So while the details of all the papers have been alarming, let's face it, they're very alarming, and to some extent depressing, the overall message from the presentations are extremely positive. As Maina said, although he's tired of talking and telling and retelling the same stories over and over again, he does so and is willing to keep doing so because he's absolutely convinced of the need to bring Tuvalu's neighbours to a shared realisation of the devastating consequences of inaction. He wants to see practical outcomes that affirm island life, practical projects that will support communities to stay on their land. Oops, where have I gone from there? Oh yeah, and Elizabeth strongly emphasised the importance of intergenerational transmission. So again, in itself, a look to the future, a positive look to the future, that we as custodians of today, we as her people, as custodians of today, the children are the custodians of the future, and it's our responsibility together to gather that traditional stories and practices and pass them on to the children. This was echoed by Chrissy as well. And then the final thing, let's not forget how Icamos Pacifica reminded us through their fabulous performance of the Meke that Indigenous people are amazingly resilient, that their culture is actually full of joy. I think that was Maina alluded to that as well. And that they have survived a range of disasters, both natural and human. They've survived colonialism in most places. They've survived various attempts to control and dominate and disappear their culture, and it persists. And despite everything, it can still continue into the future. And there is a positive outlook, I think, as long as we all listen to the messages that we've been told today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. Very well done. My goodness. So now we come to the end of the day. And I'd like to sincerely thank our strategic partners. Without their financial and in-kind support, this workshop would not have been possible. The Australian Museum for providing the venue and sponsorship in kind of the Caring for Country workshop. The Getty Conservation Institute for their generous sponsorship of the Caring for Country workshop. GA2023 for providing budget and holding the workshop as part of the scientific symposium. So we were upgraded from just a side event to actually part of the main scientific program. City Plan Heritage, in particular Karamay Dennis and Kim Bennett, for organising the keynotes travel and accommodation, gifts and sponsoring 3 assistants and stationery, and in particular Asmita Basin, who has been amazing behind the scenes. In particular, thank her for her computer graphic and software skills, which have been in evidence today, for preparing the template designs and the PowerPoints for the workshop, for formatting the keynote speakers' presentations and preparing the directional signage, name tags and other graphic aids of the workshop. I don't know how we would be here today without City Plan and Asmita. And Aranex for doing much of the registration of attendees for this event and assisting with many other tasks behind the scenes to get this event happening. I must also thank Richard Mackay for stepping in at the last minute and providing us additional support above and beyond, which actually made a huge difference in the last few days. Thanks to everyone who contributed to the day, the Caring for Country Workshop Committee, Sarah Ferguson, Marcy Rockman from Washington, Elizabeth Edwards, Melissa Marlou and Moe Moana Schwenke from the Australian Museum, Drew Kennedy and Catherine Forbes, who attended many Zoom meetings with Karamay Dennis and I over the last few years and organised the speakers and panellists, the questions and the format of the day. Elizabeth Edwards for videoing and recording snapshots of the day. Thank you very much. Ms. Ninga Tavuki, Ms. Salanyeta Marama, Ms. Juliana Tiribaku Yawa, Ms. Louisa Koroi Garcia, and Ms. Elizabeth Edwards for performing the Mekke. And last but not least, thanks so much to you all for coming and joining us today and contributing to the conversation on climate change and Indigenous heritage.